Hey everyone, happy Halloween. It's Naomi Wolf of Outspoken and Daily Clout, and I'm going to read to you today my essay, as I promised, called The Devil His Due. Before we get into that, I know you guys permit me a little bit of a rant, or whether you permit me or not, I take the liberty of a little bit of a rant from time to time. And I just want to call your attention. It's so infuriating and awful. And again, I'm putting on my political consultant hat. The shameful MIA nature of the media in not noticing how corrupt the polls are around Zoran Mamdani and the New York mayoral election. Um, there's a poll aggregator that posted an Emerson College poll. Now, Emerson College used to be a respected pollster, but I've been diving into the polling that has been cited by all the major media around this campaign in particular, the mayoral race in New York. And whole waves of legacy media are reporting outcomes of polls based on faulty polling. Mamdani, was heralded as having a gigantic lead right out of the gate. And in a couple of essays back, my first essay, I think, Why Don't I Like Him, about Zoran Mamdani, I tore that poll apart. It was, a very weighted, tiny sample. Well, this poll, I can't even believe it. Emerson, it's been picked up by all the legacy media, like pretty much telling people stay home, don't bother voting. Mamdani has it in the, under wraps. There's nothing to be done. But in fact, and it claims to show a 25-point lead for Mamdani over his next closest challenger, Cuomo. Well, it's just so maddening. If you click through to the Emerson College poll and just look at it, and it's right there pinned on X, on my X, you'll see that in fact the respondents, it was 640 respondents. Tiny, tiny, tiny sample, A. B, they 3-to-1 disproportionately overpopulated the sample with not only college graduates, but graduate school graduates or people with graduate school degrees or graduate school experience uh, versus high school experience. And in fact, the numbers are 27% to 40% in New York, high school to college. So they grossly inflated in the sample the number of graduate students, or people who have graduate degrees who are much more likely to vote for Zoran Mamdani. And also see if you can spot what's wrong with this methodology, my friends. The way they did the poll overwhelmingly was an online panel, like a pop-up. Who are you going to vote for? A pop-up online. And I'll tell you why that's messed up in just a minute. Or texting. So this just, I can't even believe, again, as a former political consultant, how corrupt that methodology is. See if you can spot what's wrong with it. First of all, who's online? Not all day, not the working classes, not people in factories, not cops, not teachers, right? So you're going to miss all the working class, middle class voters who are out there working for a living, and plumbers, and like you're going to get the leisure class, basically, who are home doing uh brain labor, right, moving things around on their computers. B, when you send out a poll, this is so evil. I'm going to bust Emerson College wide open because I'm going to ask them to show me algorithmically how they send out their online panel, right? It sounds like very, serious and grown up. We're having an online panel. I think it's a pop-up. Well, one of those things you get in your feed on social media, and who's on social media, right? Or maybe by email, they don't specify, that says, who are you going to vote for? Well, if it's email, it's going to be stopped by a spam filter. So it's probably on social media. Again, who's on social media, right? Like, I don't have that confirmed from Emerson College, but I'm certainly going to ask. But it's definitely online. And lastly, you can narrowcast. Oh my God. on Facebook, right? Or on any social media platform, you can say, I want this age group that lives in a city or a rural area that votes Democrat or Republican, that is, has these hobbies and interests. I mean, you can tailor it so closely to who sees that pop up or that online panel, or even what those phone numbers are that are getting that poll, right? I mean, is it random phone numbers? Maybe it's random phone numbers, or is it by zip code, right? Because that matters, because Manhattan is a lot more affluent in Mamdani voting probably than deepest Brooklyn, where the firefighters live, or Staten Island. But online, oh my God, there's literally no way to launch a questionnaire online that is completely random. You can't do it. You can't launch a random questionnaire. Everything involves tailoring the recipients before you even send it out there. So I'm calling BS on this poll. And lastly, like, just to overinflate by a factor of 3 to 1 the numbers of college graduates and graduate students versus high school, education, is a complete corruption of the pollster process. Emerson College, you should be ashamed. If you want to contact me, you can come on my show, Outspoken, a representative of Emerson College polling, to justify this disgusting misuse and abuse of the pollster's responsibility, ethics, art, but also media. Shame on you. Shame on you. Legacy media from, I mean, I don't have the list, but this is the kind of poll that's been covered from, Daily News, New York Post, to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Politico, The Hill. Shame on you all. I haven't seen a single story that clicked through, and it's not difficult. It's not rocket science, you guys, to click through one click and take a look at the methodology. It's on a Google Sheet. You can see it right there pinned on my X. I will pin it at the bottom of this video as well. And you can see for yourself how disgustingly tendentious and tiny this sample is, and how cherry picked. So we can't possibly know what New Yorkers are choosing, because this poll is so corrupt. But we do know that a poll that is all over the media saying, it's, don't bother, he's 25 points ahead, you might as well stay home, will definitely depress voting, especially from older voters who are less likely to be Mamdani voters. So, ugh, gross. Shame on you all. Honestly, I am disgusted. I'm disgusted as a journalist. I am disgusted as a former political consultant. Emerson College has a great deal to answer for, but Interactive Polling, which posted it, and to their credit, they contacted me by DM, whoever they are. I wonder if they're human, and said, you can see the sample when you click through. Fair enough, because I had said, what's the sample? What's the sample? But the sample is ridiculous and inadequate, and the methodology is completely corrupt. So that's my rant before we get into the essay, The Devil His Due. Now, my friends, I shall read to you my beautiful, I hope it's beautiful, my beautiful essay about Halloween. Here we go. So, I'm sitting in a cute cafe in Salem, Massachusetts, a town where, as you know, for family reasons, Brian and I spend time. The walls of the cafe are a cozy pumpkin color washed with a stucco effect, which takes me back to the happy 1990s, when this kind of decor was last in fashion. The floorboards are of scuffed yellow pine. Real tree branches hold up shelves that contain casual reading for restless children and adults. A big artsy poster above the serving area reads, in bold black letters, avocado. The servers are friendly, tattooed and pierced. The specialties on a big board above them are all vegan bowls. These have either an Easterny or a pagan Celtic-y name: Buddha bowl, green goddess bowl. I've always felt quite comfortable and happy here since this hippie friendly with organic reference is exactly the kind of interior that I grew up with in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury. You guys, I'm just going to pause for a minute and make sure that my computer is charged. And I just unplugged my light when I did that. So now I will restart my light and then we should be all good to go. No. Oh dear, I've turned off my light. Well, guys, let's see if I can, pardon me one second. We're going to have to edit this out. Okay, that's on. And now that's on. All right. Sorry about that, friends. The servers are friendly, tattooed and pierced. The specialties on a big board above them are all vegan bowls. These have either an Easterny or a pagan Celtic name, Buddha bowl, green goddess bowl. I've always felt quite comfortable and happy here since this hippie friendly with organic reference, yes, I'm reading this paragraph again, is exactly the kind of interior that I grew up around in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury. I have been in similar cafes my whole life. The Village Natural, now sadly defunct, in New York's West Village was one. A basement with, as I recall, brown walls, burlap covered, and with dusty ferns hanging from white macrame, always macrame, holders in the window. It was a reliable, familiar cave, unchanged, it seemed, since the 1970s. My kids would eat platters of chewy buckwheat pancakes, and I would tackle tofu cutlets on mounds of flavorless steamed vegetables on Sunday mornings, while we were served with silent attention by Tibetan waitstaff. The servers at Village Natural, which was not a Tibetan restaurant, were always Tibetan. I do not know why. There are similar cafes in Barcelona and Boston, London, and Delhi. The staff members, when not actually from an exotic Eastern locale, tend to invoke the East. Cheery young men and women with shoulder-length hair, wearing vaguely Moroccan harem pants, vaguely Indian vests. They may have ankle bracelets. They are likely to jingle when they move around. I have a Pavlovian response to such places and people. I always feel right at home and am filled with joy. The hippie vibe is a universal note in this world. Though the hippies, my slightly older people, my tribe, did not really prevail, they kind of also did. A set of ethics and an aesthetic that were alternative and marginal in my childhood has permeated our culture, often for the better. There are vinyasa yoga and sound healing classes for stressed out North Shore moms at the YMCA across the street. You can live with your boyfriend or girlfriend without social opprobrium. You can get a cannabis gummy from any corner dispensary now. Turn on. You can listen to sitar music while commuting to work. Tune in. Or you can work from home and take a mental health day. Drop out. In case a lot of you are too young to remember, that was a 1960s motto, turn on, tune in, drop out. The hippie aesthetic is mostly benign. It was about life, about nature, babies, about peace, love, health, wellness, harmony, positive spirituality, and goodness. The hippie movement of the 1960s into the early 1970s did dismantle great superstructures of hypocrisy and needless repression. It is true. You can worship where you wish or not at all. You can be an accountant by day and sing in a garage band on weekends. You can have all the babies you want out of wedlock and not be cast out of society or pressured by society to give up your child for adoption. But new superstructures of morality, of positive community, let alone of group ritual, were not erected to replace the bad old structures and rituals that fell apart. Or, if these superstructures were attempted, they did not last. Woodstock came and went. So there is now a void. People in the West have all the license and moral liberty they wish, but no longer have a civilization of light, a set of primitive rites and traditions made up of shared experiences with others. So we seek meaning, order, group transcendence, ritual. In my childhood, as I've written previously, Christmas was a real thing. Whether you were Christian or not, you thrilled with the general atmosphere, decorations involving gigantic silver bells, sparkly with glitter, real Christmas carols that filled the air, really mentioning the Son of God. He was born. In my childhood, Easter was a real thing, a collective national delight. Whether you were Christian or not, you rejoiced along with others. The flowered bonnets, the bright blue and pink dyed Easter eggs, the families sitting down to a midday Easter dinner around a white tablecloth. There were spring flowers everywhere, and throngs of women in pastel dresses and men in dark suits with sparkling white shirts, standing in the sunshine, smiling, blinking in the light after church services. The day felt hushed, special, magical. He was risen. You did not have to be Christian to see and participate in positive rituals within the culture. In my childhood and into my adulthood, groups of somberly dressed Jewish families would drift along the sidewalks to arrive at synagogue on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. You shared apples and honey for Rosh Hashanah or broke the fast with others after Yom Kippur, and the days had the grave ascetic quality of heightened meaning. But these rituals, along with others, are the target of erasure after erasure. Easter was canceled in the UK in 2025 at a primary school due to its not being inclusive. The and by the way, just a bit of a rabbit hole here. That word inclusive, I really noticed when it was introduced in about 5 years ago into kind of the lexicon of virtue. It was new, and I thought, why is inclusive mattering? Like, you know, there should be justice and equal rights, but nothing in our Constitution says that you have to kind of include everyone in your, kumbaya tea party. It's like inclusive. That's such a weird Marxist collectivist term. And it really made me wonder. And then it was codified in diversity, equity, inclusion. Um, but inclusiveness has never been like in a really free society, people can associate with who they want to associate with. And sure, it's nice to be nice, but it's in a free society, the state is not supposed to be making sure that there's like demographic balance at the high school lunch table. Um, I mean, within, you know, freedom of association, obviously they have to make sure that there's equal access for everyone to the high school, but they don't dictate your behavior to other people. But I see why inclusion has been, what is the word, valorized and codified in this way, because if your goal is to erase cultures in the West, you have to insist on inclusion. Or else people can say, look, everyone here has equal rights. That's that. We're having Christmas, they're having whatever, Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Adha, and they're having Diwali, and it's all fine. But no, if you want to erase Christmas, you say it's not inclusive. Or if you want to erase anything, you say it's not inclusive. Um, the Boldmere Christmas Festival and Light Switch On in the UK has been canceled for 2025, allegedly due to, quote, lack of funding, lol. Tablet magazine last year did a roundup of the examples of European countries disavowing or rebranding Christmas. Quote, France, the European country with the most immigrants of Arab origin, has also been de-Christianizing Christmas for years. After the jihadist attack against a Christmas market in Strasbourg in 2018, far from redoubling the defense of freedom and pride in their Christian traditions, political leaders intensified the secularist drift. And this year, there are already a majority of French cities whose authorities have decided to eliminate Christian referencing in Christmas celebrations, sometimes going to ridiculous extremes. Nantes is now celebrating its, quote, winter journey, end quote, whatever that means. Angers is observing, quote, winter suns. Bordeaux is touting Bordeaux in festivities. And Saint-Denis is holding a Christmas vacation called Destination Beautiful Winter, while its mayor celebrates the holidays by shouting Happy Winter. The official festive brochure of this French community includes puppets, fire eaters, craft workshops for children, and no iconic Christian Christmas imagery. In France, the madness was best captured, ironically, by a French Muslim delivery man in a video that went viral. In it, he relayed how on one of his deliveries last year, he noticed that Christmas decorations and nativity scenes were absent at a town hall in the countryside. The mayor had told him that the state had sent out instructions that there should be no decorations in city halls. And the image I have here, I will share my screen, is allow to share screen. I don't know if I can do this. Never mind, I will stop. Oh, did I just ruin something? I hope not. Can you still hear and see me? Let me know. I think I made a mistake there. Let me stop sharing the screen. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I've ruined everything. Okay, I'll just keep going without sharing my screen. It's an image of Santa Claus with a giant present having fallen on him and crushing him. So the festivals of light and love in the Judeo-Christian traditions are being dialed down or dispersed. But somehow this is not the case for Halloween. It is roaring along in America, at least, stronger than ever. On the soundtrack of this cafe, Lady Gaga is singing an aggressively catchy tune, Abracadabra. Abracadabra, 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 abracadabra. Pay the toll to the angels, drawing circles in the clouds. Keep your mind on the distance when the devil turns around. Hold me in your heart tonight, in the magic of the dark moonlight. Save me from this empty fight in the game of life. And I show her in a white and dark red abracadabra video. In the dark red outfit, she's sort of dripping with blood and gore. And it looks very, of course, satanic and demonic. Abracadabra is a phrase that probably descends from Aramaic. Abra, I create, kedabra, as I speak. The phrase was used by Gnostics to summon, quote, beneficial spirits, and it is mentioned in writings of antiquity as forming the basis for amulets against disease. It is an occult phrase. The phrase, I create as I speak, embodies the possibilities and now I think the likelihood that occultism, its ritual, its invocation, its symbolism is summoning or channeling real energies, real powers. Thus, I wonder about the robust and unfettered nature of the celebration of Halloween. As other brighter holidays that invoke angels and a savior are erased or euphemized or downscaled, Halloween is supported publicly and privately more enthusiastically than ever. I am not one of those religious fanatics who warn that haunted houses are the devil's work, or am I? Am I inching in the direction of wondering about that possibility? Do we invoke and unleash dark spirits when we invoke and unleash dark spirits? Do we know what we are doing, really, by getting rid of the church bells, the Christmas trees, the angels, and then unprotected, invoking the devil, death, hauntings by the dead, hell realms, is more involved perhaps than decor? No one, interestingly, except people seen as actual fanatics, is suggesting that schools or townships stop celebrating Halloween, although that holiday is not inclusive either, coming as it does from the Celtic Samhain, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, which acknowledged the opening of the portal between the living and the dead, and the later Christian tradition of recognizing All Hallows, All Souls on this evening. And I show in the essay a wheel of the year used to celebrate Samhain. Here, in this most iconic of destinations where I'm broadcasting from, Salem, Massachusetts, Halloween is the biggest day of the year, and it draws tourists and seekers from across the country, indeed from around the world. The historic streets, many of them unchanged from the late 18th and early 19th centuries, are, in spite of the rain, unusually thronged. Women pass by, looking at fancy soaps and lotions in windows. They are wearing black witches' hats or space alien outfits, silver helmets obscuring their faces. Men pass by. They glance at the knives and tarot card decks displayed in the shop windows and at the vintage comic books on display. The men are dressed as murderers, blood dripping from the sides of their mouths, or as monsters. I passed a little girl dressed as a princess, all sparkly chiffon skirts and a tiara, and a little girl dressed as a ghost. And then, to my surprise, I also passed a little girl dressed as a Puritan child in black with a long skirt and a severe white collar and a black headdress. My pleasant server showed up with my Buddha bowl. I glanced up at him and did a double take. He wore a lifelike Frankenstein mask, complete with a stitched up cheek scar, a green tinge to the skin, and a low, threatening occipital ridge. "Can I get you some hot sauce?" the creature asked. A cluster of chic French tourists sat in the niche diagonal to mine, accompanied by a well-behaved collie service dog. A French woman in her 30s had black Christian crosses embroidered all over her fishnet stockings. The porches of the neighborhoods around us are celebrating this holiday with gusto. Our neighbor arranged 2 life-size skeletons waving at the street. There are 2 bloody palm print stickers on one of the windows of our building. Okay, it's our window. Brian loves Halloween and all things creepy. A tiny doll with long black hair, a white gown, and a shrunken head hangs now on our own porch where my floral and eucalyptus wreath usually hangs. There are severed, bloody limbs displayed on other porches nearby, and our neighbors have lined their entire garden plots with faux headstones. Skeletal hands emerge from mulch and from between shrubs. Tourists flock to the sites devoted to the famous witch trials. You can see an entire theatrical enactment of the horrific events of the Salem witch trials of 1692 at a witch theater nearby. As a cultural critic, it seems to me that aspects, and by the way, that location is a desanctified church. As a cultural critic, it seems to me that aspects of all this ritual and celebration are kind of weird. The Salem witch trials have, at least throughout the 20th and into the 21st centuries, been portrayed as revealing nothing more complex than the madness of fanatical Christian religiosity. That the trials certainly demonstrated. Innocent people were murdered by the state. The hysteria of teenage girls inflamed an entire Puritan judiciary. But also, what if occult forces are also real? What if the girls in question tripped to their misfortune and to that of any number of innocent people over something real? Tituba, the enslaved Native American, probably Arawak woman, who was believed to have been sold through Barbados, was at the center of the Salem witch accusations. She was accused of introducing the girls whose hysterical symptoms launched the trials to witchcraft. She was accused of making a witch cake and of other dark practices. She is portrayed in American culture understandably as a target of wholly demented hostility and fanaticism on the part of Puritans. But what if there is a very human mixture of truth and untruth, of a very real folk practice taken out of its original context and grievously reinterpreted within Puritan Christianity in this extraordinary story? What if Tituba, in fact, did introduce the girls to aspects of witchcraft? What if, isolated and hopeless of ever returning home, this enslaved woman shared some aspects of what she knew from her religious witchcraft tradition as a way perhaps to gain favor or security in an incredibly hostile, completely alien environment? If she did share a ritual or an occult practice, Tituba would not have seen such activity culturally the way Reverend Samuel Parris, the Puritan minister within Salem's parish, and whose accusations against Tituba led to the witch trials, saw it. That is to say, she would not have seen such activity within the framework of Christian demonology. Obeah, Obeah, was the religious occult practice of witchcraft in Barbados in the 18th century. It used magic for medicinal purposes and also for anti-medicinal purposes, curses. It was deployed in a completely different cultural context from that of Salem, one in which the use of both black and white magic was part of engagement with the natural world. J. Handler, in Slave Medicine and Obeah in Barbados, circa 1650 to 1834, explains that Barbadian slaves in the period in question did indeed believe that supernatural forces had a role in the real world, including in slave medicine. Obeah was based on African beliefs. Scholarly articles about Obeah point out that 17th century English society was familiar via enslaved Africans and Caribbeans with Obeah, which is akin to, but not identical to, Santeria or Voodoo or Voodoo. The articles point out that enslaved people's practice of Obeah gave rise to racist English depictions in this period, in the late 17th century, of enslaved people as being demonic and as worshiping in ways that threatened Christianity. Quote, Obeah, Black and White Magic in the Bahamas, end quote, by Basil C. Hedrick, points out that Obeah does indeed engage with, quote, white magic and black magic, end quote. Quote, it is positive and it is negative. It can cure or it can cause harm, end quote. Quote, Obeah was essentially a type of sorcery which involved harming others at the request of clients by the use of charms, poisons, and shadow casting, end quote. Obeah is, as one practitioner put it, quote, a natural fact, end quote. About half of the clients of a mental health practitioner cited by Hedrick believed that they had been fixed or hexed, cursed, the hex having caused them mental or physical pain. May all of the victims of the Salem witch trials, including Tituba, who was imprisoned for months, rest in peace. The trials do represent an explosion of madness, of course. 20 people were executed and 200 were accused. 4 others died in prison awaiting trials. The miscarriage of justice was eventually recognized. Judge Samuel Sewall recanted his guilty verdicts in 1697, only 5 years later, and accuser Ann Putnam Jr. publicly apologized in 1706. The Massachusetts General Court issued a formal apology in 1957. There are now monuments to the victims and to the travesty of justice that their deaths and periods of imprisonment represent. That is as it should be. But, do we erase what may have actually been real by wiping away what was unreal? Charles Baudelaire, the poet, wrote that, quote, the devil's best trick is to persuade you that he does not exist, end quote. I met a North Shore mom recently at a student athletic meet. I was delighted to meet her. She is a healer and energy worker. We spoke about the strange vibe in Salem. I mentioned that though we have been coming here for 4 years, and though it is beautiful, I never feel completely comfortable. I always sense a darkness and a feeling of foreboding. Quote, don't you know it is the world headquarters of Satanism? End quote, she asked me. And this is true. And in fact, there's a museum of Satanism down the road. Maybe the Puritans in Salem in 1692 were insane and hysterical, but also maybe some of them picked up on the possibility that something among them was also real. Maybe they came face to face with a complex, established belief system from elsewhere that used, well, witchcraft. Maybe the storytelling about Salem in the 20th and 21st centuries seeks to erase even the possibility of our understanding that perhaps two worldviews collided at the end of the 17th century in a little Massachusetts village surrounded by dark forest, and that one of them may have represented something that was not imaginary but real. Maybe the fact that Christmas and Easter and church bells and angels are being erased or silenced in America, and that life affirming symbols such as flowers and chicks and eggs and babies in cradles are being put away and forgotten or never introduced to children in the first place, and that death affirming symbolism such as devils and ghosts and graveyards and murderers are celebrated without constraint, and that the streets of the town are lined with shops selling magic and the rituals of the occult to cheery tourists. Maybe all this actually does something to us on this, our plane of human existence. Maybe those who practice Obeah and Voodoo and Santeria are smarter than we are about certain white and black forces. Maybe other people know that, and we, to our detriment, have forgotten. Maybe you shouldn't invite these forces in unless you want them to come in. And that is my essay, The Devil His Due. Your browser has blocked your screen. Can you all see and hear me? All right, so that was my essay, and there's a lot of commentary and a lot of response to this. So let's take a look. And yeah, I did want to just kind of share that those set of thoughts. It's really a profound day, and since I posted that essay, people are really recognizing or noting and responding that they agree that the celebration of Halloween, not that I'm trying to be a downer, it's Halloween today. I want you to have fun. I want you to get all the candy you want and wear your sexy black cat outfit if you want to. I'm not like trying to stand in the way of that, but um, people are confirming that the celebration of Halloween has gotten dramatically more um, dark and gruesome and graphic. And they're giving really good examples. So they're saying, and one woman gave an incredible example chronologically. She said that in 2018, she went to a Halloween party for her child's dojo, the um, kind of karate club where children practice martial arts. And it was so cute. It was children in pumpkin outfits and children in Elmo outfits and candy corn and, you know, kitty cats and like so benign. But that in 2019, suddenly everything changed. And then in 2020, it was completely demonic. And I also feel and recognize that change. I mean, I remember when Halloween really wasn't that scary, like it was like a tiny bit of a little thrill for 5-year-olds. And the kids had their little trick or treat, plastic pumpkins, and they would put on a sheet with holes in the eyes and say boo, and you would go ah, like that. And it was really quite benign. But I agree that around 2020, suddenly there was an incredible explosion. I would not be surprised, all of it manufactured in China and very, very cheap, which is interesting, out of places like Walmart. And it was like things you would just never see before, like very anatomically correct severed limbs, right? Bleeding, or, those gigantic skeletons that everyone has, which I think kind of, I'm going to say it, I think they kind of invoke the Nephilim, the fallen angels. The Nephilim were giants. And these are giant skeletons. Why are there suddenly giant skeletons, right? Like, do you ever give that any thought? Like, suddenly everyone's got a 20-foot tall skeleton. They're very, very, very affordable, like probably cheaper than they cost to manufacture. I don't know about you guys, but to me, that's got an archetypal resonance. Those are the skeletons of giants. And the last time we had giants, according to the Old Testament, was the angels who, the Nephilim, who, fell from the heavenly realms and mated with human women, and God didn't like them. So there's that. And then there's also like very like severed heads and severed hands and just a lot of dismemberment, bloody dismemberment, and much scarier, like much scarier faces, like masks. I mean, I remember when kids' costumes that you would get at, CVS or even in costume stores were like the Cat in the Hat, or Where's Waldo? And now it's like, really, a lot of slasher films, a lot of murderers and rapists, and things that are not even cute or funny, but just very, very, very violent. And the other thing I've been thinking about, this connects to thoughts I've had about the kind of books kids are reading and what's beamed at them on their social media. I've looked at my um, beloved young relative. He's 14. He plays, he used to play Roblox and now he plays other video games. They're terrifying. They're literally terrifying. Just ordinary video games are dark and demonic and creepy. And then I looked at the TikTok feeds of a young woman who showed me why all of her girlfriends are depressed, and it's been around, for her high school years. And it's like a lot of what's called in German unheimlich imagery, unhomely, unsettling. It's called uncanny, right? Like the uncanny valley. It's like things that are like not like your subconscious mind thinks that's not okay. There's something wrong with that. A lot of distortion of the human body. You see this a lot in music videos or things moving, like humans that move in a way that's not human. You see that in music videos as well through special effects, and a lot of like humans turning into animals, humans turning into monsters. It very disturbing, very disturbing. And lastly, little kids, I go into bookstores now and the kids section, even when it's not Halloween, is like creepy this and creepy that. And I was just at this cafe yesterday I wrote about in this essay, and it's like the children's book facing me was I'm Still Scared. And then you look inside these books and they're like for 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds, they're terrifying. So I personally think this is part of the psyop. I think art, like I remember culture aimed at children in the 60s and into the 70s. It was like more innocent than the real world. It was, lambs and puppies and happy, purple dinosaurs and, or Snoopy, like beagles that could talk. I mean, it was an absolutely terrifying imagery. So I think Halloween is getting more gruesome as part of this worshiping of demonic forces. I do. Or just a more benign, like a more materialist part of wearing us down by desensitizing us to horror and depressing us. Um, and it's on a continuum, right? Like you see the severed heads and the severed limbs all around you, and it's fun, right? Ha ha ha, woo, and kind of glamorous and thrilling. Well, I think there's a direct line of that to MAID, the program in Canada where they're euthanizing tens of thousands of people. Started with the terminally ill, and predictably, then it's the elderly, and then it's the depressed, and then it's teenagers who have, special needs, and they're killing people. It's a mass killing machine. Predictably, now they're harvesting their organs. All of this is predictable, right? But how do you get there if you don't desensitize people to bloodshed and violence in the first place? Oh, it's just a dead person with Down syndrome, whatever. You can harvest their organs. Someone else might make use of them. It's a direct line from the desensitization of all these. I don't even like walking outside right now because there's so many severed limbs everywhere. And I have PTSD from actual trauma, and I don't, I'm a rape victim. I don't survivor. I don't like seeing people in costumes of thrillers that involved kidnapping young women or torturing them. I don't like it. It's scary. It's scary to me. It's traumatizing to me. So I think we're traumatizing children. I do. And I think this is part of, and I never thought I'd go there, but I'm starting to believe this whole MK Ultra thing is real and that there's a reason that children are being targeted with trauma as well as with the erasure of their boundaries in other ways, like sexually in school. So it's all a continuum, I think. But I just wanted to say that, like, if you have children, watch what their video games are. It may seem like, oh, I'm building, Minecraft or whatever, I'm building a city, but there's some dark stuff going on. And look in their schools. It's not just, 16 versions of trans, not that. I mean, that's a different conversation. That's a different video. I support LGBTQ rights, but as you know, I don't think any adults should be talking to any children about sexuality. I used to think that there was a reason to do it. Now I don't, unless you're the parents. But point is, side by side with there's no gender, there's 8 gazillion sexualities that you need to think about when you're in middle school or preschool or whatever, right? There's also this very, 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 very scary material that, and kids are anxious. And then that goes right to pharma, right? The sedatives, the anti-anxiety meds, the what is it called, hyperactivity meds. I mean, these kids could just be scared. I mean, it's scary out there. They're going to go trick-or-treating tonight, and it's absolutely terrifying. And can I say one more thing? It used to be Halloween was for kids, and the parents would stay home and pass out candy, or they would escort giant flocks of kids from door to door to make sure they were safe. Now it's like more adults than kids out there. It's more like, let me wear a prostitute costume. I'm, 35 or whatever, and it's this vibe of adults just embracing darkness and embracing kind of the ritual of a world without any kind of positive boundaries. Um, all right, so let's see what you all have to say about that. I hope I'm not like too Debbie Downer in this case. Oh, well, that's interesting. You're bringing up exactly the counter argument. Maybe we're tired of the hypocrisy. And like, I hear you and I believe that. And especially if people have grown up in a really, scary family or have experienced violence or child abuse, I can see how a child-oriented culture that's all, you know, rainbows and unicorns, not, I mean, like actual rainbows and unicorns, would seem hypocritical. Is that what you meant? And I can see that seeing darkness everywhere at least once a year is kind of, you know, making it real or keeping it real. But so Sunny Bumps, funny handle, say more about that because maybe other people feel that way too. It's interesting. And Amy Amaral says Devil is trying to win. I'm kind of thinking that, you guys, I am. Ooh, the Irish speak up. Here we go. Um, so I'm so glad you said this, Maureen Clancy. My husband's Irish, of course, Brian O'Shea. He loves the dead, right? He loves, like, we'll be in places that I'm sure are haunted. And I've written this. He'll, sit up and pour a glass of whiskey for the ghost, the footsteps we hear outside the door. This really happened in Rhodes' house, actually. There are literally footsteps that walk up and down the hallways in Rhodes' house. Cecil Rhodes, he was responsible for the deaths of many thousands of people in Southern Africa. Um, and I'll be like cowering under the covers, praying that the footsteps will go away. And Brad's like, come on in, have a drink, So he has a completely different relationship to this, much more like what you describe. I'm Irish. Halloween is a day to communicate with our ancestors. It's not about horror unless that is what you make it to be. Fair enough. And that's true for in Mexico too, Dia de los Muertos. Um, and there's a place for that. I mean, people have also been talking very beautifully about the importance of remembering our ancestors and connecting with our ancestors. So I get that. I'd love to hear more about what Irish people do on Halloween to communicate with the ancestors. Um, and let's see. Oh, interesting, Roscoe. Roscoe is our old friend. Roscoe sings. He heard that they were parlor games from England the girls probably gave Tituba. That's very interesting, and it's possible. I guess a witch cake is something that was a known thing in England. Um, and it's very possible, but I also think there's a lot of interesting woke rewriting of history going on, in which all it's all the crazy Puritans and the bad girls. And I'm not saying Tituba was bad. I just think it's very interesting. And maybe the girls, taught her an English parlor game and got her in a lot of trouble, and she got blamed because she's the powerless slave. Very possible. But I I'm also intrigued that there's so much revisionist history, especially around the Salem witch trials. You should take a look. Like AI is so woke in describing what happened as kind of neocolonialist um, projection onto Tituba. But I think it's actually less racist and less neocolonialist to think it's possible that enslaved people brought their own culture and religion, and there was a collision, possibly. That makes sense to me. I mean, we were slaves in Egypt and we brought our own culture and religion. Um, just because people are enslaved doesn't mean that their cultures go away. Oh, that's very important. Don't forget to evaluate the halftime at the Super Bowl. Say more about that. I confess, now I'm going to really show my age and gender. Is that coming up? Did it happen already? If it happened already, what happened? If it's coming up, what do we expect? Say more about that. But you're right. The Super Bowl halftime has been completely psycho demonic, right? Also the Olympic Games. What the heck? I mean, there's something really going on here, guys. Like ritual, mass consciousness really does seem to matter. Well, how can we be surprised? Hitler knew that. Um, so let's see. Oh, Roscoe, I want to curse the people who laid off 14,000 Amazon employees. Um, I'm sure that we all have lots of people we want to curse. Just be careful because it is, I mean, you know me, right? I'm reading through the Hebrew Bible. The Old Testament is very clear that, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Um, and and they are really very, very clear that you shouldn't be casting spells, or hexes or issuing curses. That's kind of God's decision who gets cursed and who gets blessed. But that's just the Old Testament. That's just our tradition. So I'm not going to do it, but I understand how you feel. I'm more interested in protecting myself against curses. In fact, I just ordered some mezuzahs, for which we don't have, which is bad, for our doors. And that is the ancient Jewish tradition, which is actually spelled out in Leviticus, of a scroll with a blessing on it, in a case that you affix to your door. And God literally gives you the instructions for doing it in Leviticus. Um, oh, Autumn Smith, also an old friend of ours, also highly sexualized costumes for kids and adults. Autumn, you are 1,000% correct. And it's like, it's really interesting to me because I've always kind of liked, okay, how much do I want to be full disclosure? I've always thought, you know, oh, never mind. I mean, I I kind of admire ladies who carry off slutty clothing. I do. I self-consciously pulling up my shirt, even as I say this. Um, I I kind of think it's, flying the banner of femininity if you want to, right? But I also have noticed that on Halloween, people, women who never dress revealingly or provocatively tend to go all out. It's like letting out a shadow side of them. And, you know, good for them. I mean, Mardi Gras festivals, there's always been that need for the release of the repressed, right, in a society. And you could argue that that's very healthy. But I do agree with Autumn that things are much more sexualized for adults than they used to be. I'm not going to judge. Adults can do what they want to do, but they're also much more sexualized for kids. And I know what she's talking about, the little, harem outfits with the bare midriffs that little girls are wearing, the little cheerleader outfits, the little I mean, there are other outfits that are, very kind of provocative that little girls are wearing. And in the context of so much sexualization of little girls and teenage girls all over fashion and advertising, this is really very real. So Roscoe fears I've lost Halloween spirit, like Roseanne, Halloween episode 3, Ghosts of Halloween Past. Maybe, I mean, I could be overreacting. It's possible. I mean, I kind of love Halloween. I'm just freaked out right now by the darkness of the world. If the world weren't so dark in the non-Halloween days, I don't think I'd be caring at all. I'd be enjoying the darkness at Halloween. I think that's a fair thing to say. Um, so check out Ally McForever on YouTube or IG for Irish info on salmon Halloween. That sounds very interesting. What do they do, the Irish, for salmon? I'd love to know. Am I pronouncing it right or wrong? And oh, Roscoe says, I love psychological thrillers more than straight up horror. I was thoroughly grossed out by Nosferatu. It's a Dracula perversion. My dad was actually a Dracula specialist. May he rest in peace. And Nosferatu, interesting. So Dracula was a 19th century novel by Bram Stoker. I think Nosferatu, the movie, was early 20th century and thus earlier than the 1930s famous Dracula movie. But I'm not sure when Nosferatu, the myth, comes from. So I'm not going to watch that. Again, too scary for me. It's a brave new world for insane maniacs, says James Green. Well, it sounds like we've run out of time, unfortunately, but it sounds like the commentators are evenly divided. Some are arguing reasonably enough that there's a lot of beauty and value in communing with the dead, in celebrating, the sides of ourselves that are usually repressed, and of connecting uh, with those who've passed on. And some are, El Maldonado says, witchcraft is real for sure. And by the way, people from Brazil are going to know this, right? There are people from all over the world who come from cultures that have active witchcraft and sorcery traditions. So it's just weird to me that the West is like trying to kind of sanitize all of that, because Santeria is real. Voodoo is real. People, these are living religions. They're living faith traditions. Um, we've run out of time, and others are like, yeah, maybe there's some new darkness out there that we need to keep an eye on. Anyway, I never want to be the downer. So I hope you all have a wonderful Halloween. I hope you have a safe Halloween. I really hope you get good candy, because a whole other essay could be how boring mass-produced candy is these days, as 2 or 3 candy companies have eaten up all the little candy companies. But that I should stop for now. Thank you for listening. Um, what are you going to be? Oh, that's that's an exciting question. I'm going to be just passing out candy. I'm going to be a stepmom. That's what I'm going to be. But I want to remind you that when you support our sponsors, you support us, my independent journalism over on Substack, Outspoken, this show, and also our independent journalism over on Daily Clout. And you also support BillCam and Legisector, which lets you check any state or federal bill. So And also, we only accept sponsors who have fantastic products that we use ourselves. So don't forget to go to getnativepath.com/Daily Clout. You'll get up to 45% off their products. And I can't say enough about their collagen. It's type 1 and 3 collagen, which are most needed by the body. It's found in your hair, skin, nails, in your joints. You know that I always want to be as mobile as I can be and as flexible because of my own joint, issues. And I always take the collagen of Native Path because it makes such a difference in my own walking and moving and dancing and running and, skin, hair, all those things. I'm going to be 64 in 2 weeks. You can wish me happy birthday then. And I'm really, really glad that I have Native Path Collagen because it really makes you not really think about aging at all. And then I want you to go to AmericanAlternativeAssets.com, or you can go to the website cloutgold.com. And you really need to call them up or email them and get a report about the 7 warning signals of, are we heading toward a dollar collapse? I had an interview with the founder of American Alternative Assets the day before yesterday, and it completely revolutionized my thought process. We are really looking at a bubble that is, could have a correction that's dramatic. It's like 2008. It's even got parallels to 1929. So I think you'd be very wise to diversify into precious metals. If you had invested in gold 5 years ago, you'd have, I think, doubled your investment or more. And Brian and I are kicking ourselves that we didn't invest in gold earlier. So please be thoughtful. It's a very respected company. They've been around forever, highly regarded. American Alternative Assets, go to cloutgold.com and diversify your IRA before it's too late. Really, you guys, you need to think about alternative assets like precious metals. And then lastly, we've got a new sponsor, brightcore.com, and they have an amazing product called Kimchi One. And so kimchi is hard to eat a lot of, but they've made it very accessible, their Kimchi One product. And they you could take like 3 tablets a day, and kimchi turns out to have 900 probiotic strains and is one of the only things that helps clear your system of microplastics. So it really makes a difference to gut health, brain health, and just detoxifying you of all the toxins, but notably microplastics, according to peer-reviewed studies that they link to in our system. So go to Wolf, use the promo code WOLF on brightcore.com and order that Kimchi One. You'll get a free gift. And those, again, we only accept sponsors that we really respect and support, who really, their products do what they say they do. There's so much nonsense out there. Please don't waste your money. Support our sponsors and support us. And please remember to donate and subscribe over on Outspoken if you want me to be able to keep doing this, and donate and subscribe over at Daily Clout. That's how we bring you Legisector and Bill Cam, so you can stop bad bills, promote good bills, and be in charge of your own democracy. Who else does that for you? Seriously, who else does that? We do. So thank you for supporting us, and take care, everybody. Happy Halloween, even so. Will we